For latest updates and short audio clips, follow us on Instagram, Reading the Author.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast Reading the Author, a unique show where we read authors' mind and not their book. Meanwhile, I truly believe and pray that you and your families are completely safe and healthy as well. Guys, today we have Preeti Nair-Nayak ma'am with us, and she's the author of Scarred Rose, Rexec series book part number 1. Thank you so much ma'am for coming on our show. I'm highly grateful कि आप हमारे show पर आए.
Thank you so much for inviting, Gaurav. I'm glad to be here too.
Likewise, ma'am. So, ma'am, before I get into the podcast and know much more about your book, about your upcoming projects and everything, I would request you to please introduce yourself so that our listeners can know much more about you, and do share how you started this writing journey.
All right. Okay. So whenever someone asks me to introduce myself, I am always lost for words, rather, because it's very difficult to introduce me as maybe just as just one aspect of me. But I always like to call myself as I am first a mother, a daughter, a wife, a friend, an architect, an urban designer, a writer, a professor, and a sister, and everything. So that's what I am, and I don't believe a person should just stick to one definition, and all the aspects of the life of a person make that person complete. So that is what I am, a person who wears many hats and enjoys changing them on and off and wear them all together. Yeah. So that's me.
Yeah. How did this, ma'am, this particular book started? When did that idea just stuck in your mind? कि okay, नहीं, अब तो लिखना ही पड़ेगा. That moment.
तो ये, हाँ, so ये जो था ना, this was actually an arm twisting by my daughter. So this book has been written by a mother. So when my daughter was small, my elder one, I had two girls, and she was 6 or something, and her younger sister was about 2. She would love to listen to stories that I would narrate to her, and she was my mother, I must tell you, is a fabulous storyteller. So this was a tradition in our family that she would always, before we slept, either all of us would read together, or my father would read to us, or my mother would tell us stories, and my mother used to make up stories and tell. So from there I got into this thing, and I used to love her stories, so I thought I'll give the same to my children. So I would make up stories of my own and I would tell her. So just in that whole thing of getting that sibling bonding, I used to make up stories about 2 sisters in which and we used to call it the Protector series. So it was all about so the younger one was supposed to be the treasure that the elder one and her friends would guard. Then my daughter used to enjoy those stories, and every night I had to tell her one. Then came the time when I kind of took a sabbatical from work and decided to go for my post-graduation in urban design. So that was a very intense course. And why I'm telling you this, I'll tell you later also, because this has a huge impact on why I wrote the book. So it was an intense course, and I could not spend that much time. I used to travel 42 kilometers one way to reach my college, and come back and do my work, and most of the work would be done at night. So the storytelling somewhere stopped. So one night around 1:30 or something, my child came up to me and she said, I'm sorry, I don't want to disturb you, Mom, but can you just write down all these stories so I can read them and go off to sleep? So this was the first time she made a request like that, and after that she came up to me, and several times she said, can you write? So I used to write one story for her and keep, so that she would read it, and she'd read it slowly, try to savor it and all that. Then she said, why don't you write a book for me and give it to me on my birthday? So I used to ask her, what do you want for a gift? And she had all these creative ways of asking me. So she was like, can you just write me this book? So I don't have to bother you every time for a story before I go off to sleep. So that is how, and I promised her that, and that is how the seed of this book was germinated. But then, yeah, I got to writing it only much, much later. And every year I would say, okay, that your gift is still happening, that sort of thing. Yeah,
That's
and
so beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So this is like the so if you see, Rakshak is protector. So that is how the Rakshak series was born, and the core idea of the series still revolves around two sisters, and the sisters based on my daughters only, the elder one and the younger one, both as polar opposites, but they love each other a lot. And I had gone to Jodhpur one day for this particular book. I'll tell you where the inspiration came from. As part of my urban design study tour, where we had to go and read the city, like reading the author. So we had to read the city. So we went into the inner city of Jodhpur, and we used a method called derive, which actually means to wander or to sort of to drift. Okay, so where you allow all your experiences while drifting, they lead to your next experience that way. All right, so we kind of just took that and sort of walked along the city, and quite literally, me and a friend of mine, incidentally, this is the friend who designed the book cover also. So we stumbled upon this step 12. Literally stumbled upon it, almost fell that way. We saw this gorgeous step 12 in front of us, covered in filth. And right behind us was this huge tank called Gulab Sagar. So that, so since we were also mapping the built heritage, we kind of we've tried to find out who made this and who's the author of this work. Rather, you know, or people would commission these works, right? So we were checking, and nobody had any clues, and people were very reluctant to inform us as to who built it and who made it and things like that. So that became a source of inquiry, and it was not just the step 12; it was also the Gulab Sagar tank. There was a very beautiful hospital there called the Houston Hospital, and there were two schools. One was the Mailabag School, and there was another one which was closed. It was the boarded part of another school. Somehow one part they had completely boarded, and the other part they constructed in front of it. And the name was very intriguing. It was called Mahila Bagh, as you know, ladies' garden. So we used to think कि ये नाम क्या है, सुना नहीं है, and we were like, what is it? It was this place only for women? So that is how the inquiry began. So when I was doing my mapping, I would also ask who made this. Incidentally, the site I took up was this one, and through readings, through library articles, through talking with people there, I came to know that this was built by a lady called Paswan Gulab Rai.
Okay.
Now, she was also defined in many ways at that time. In fact, there was a Pandit who somehow belonged to the same Gotra as I did. That's what he told me. And he was like, बहन जी आप कितना धूप में काम कर रहे हो, आप बैठिए थोड़ा देर यहाँ पे बैठ के आप drawing कीजिए, that way, because we have to do a lot of drawing, no? So he asked me, and then I said, आप कौन से गोत्र से हो? So I said, कौंडिन्य गोत्र से है. And then he's like, अरे वो तो हमारा गोत्र है, तो आप हमारे घर के हुए. And that is when he opened up and said, you are asking a lot about this lady. आप मत पूछिए इनके बारे में. Then I asked him, why are you saying that? Why shouldn't I ask about her? And this is like 1700s she lived at that time. So she said, नहीं वो क्या है ना, उन्होंने किया बहुत कुछ अच्छा किया है, पर वो क्या है ना, वो पर्दायात थी राजा की. Okay, and उनके बारे में कोई बात करना पसंद नहीं करता यहाँ पे. And ये भी कि they say that her ghost is still roaming around in the school.
Okay.
And school used to be her palace once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this was like, yeah, it was very intriguing to me. And I was almost obsessed. So it was like a parallel thing. One, I'm doing my student work, and the second, I was following this trail. And I had it in my mind all the time that her story needs to come out somewhere. I wish somebody writes her story. I would, at that time, I had no clue that I would be writing her story. But yeah, and even the idea of the book was in the back burner actually, because I had no time really to do anything else. But I just wished, I made a wish at that time, and I very strongly that I wish somebody writes a story and puts her perspective across.
Definitely.
And somehow I managed to do it myself. So that was a long explanation, huh? Sorry for that.
So ma'am, like I wanted to ask that when first of all, that's really a sweet gift for your child, that you have written a book, and it will be it's a kind of thing which will be there for years and years, what I personally feel when it comes to books. But like you could have written something else also, right? What was your motive behind, like that particular inspiration? Because there must be a lot of topic, like if you're writing for your kids, or about the stories which you just recite to your kids and everything, so you could have written about something else, some other topics too. But the
yes.
Yeah, what was that thing that strikes you क्योंकि नहीं बस इसी टॉपिक पे मुझे अपनी वो भी फर्स्ट बुक चाहिए,
हाँ, सो ये इनके टॉपिक पे ना मुझे मेरी सेकंड बुक लिखनी थी एक्चुअली. तो फर्स्ट बुक जो थी वो अलग टॉपिक थी. And like I said, but now I'm telling you, my hand was not guided by my mind alone or by whatever. I do believe that Paswan Gulab Rai had a huge role to play in her story being written as the first book. I must have written almost 3 or 4 drafts with my initial idea. Okay, so I had discussed my story ideas. I would discuss with my daughter, because she can become a very great project manager. How many times she kind of reminded me, and she's like, okay, what is the timeline, when are you starting, what is the concept, all those things. And for a tiny tot, and the lockdown actually gave her that much more time to sit on my head. And she did it also. So she was like, Mommy, it'll work out, why don't you write that way? And I was completely disheartened, and I was part of this writers group. So where our mentor one day was just, asking all of us, why don't you tell us what you're going to write about, and where have you reached? And she was very kind and patient with me. And so she said, okay, what are you going to write? Where are you stuck? Tell me. So I told her that, I have this concept, but somehow it's just not, plotting is not working out. But I have another idea for my second book from this series, and that is somewhere in place. So she said, what is that plot? So when I narrated it, somehow it just flew. It was fluid, it just came out, flowed so beautifully. And I was like, why don't I make this my first book? And we can always restructure the series in such a way that what I wanted to write as the first book could somewhere come in the second, third, fourth, that way. Because that also was led on by real life incidents only. And so when I decided, okay, this is going to be my first book, you won't believe how seamlessly I was able to write it out. Okay, I just everything just fell into place. Certain research papers that I was searching for, they just came to me. A book which was out of stock. The only other book which has been written on Paswan Gulab Rai by Dr. Mohanlal Gupta, it was not available for the longest time. I stumbled again upon the website which was selling this book, and I got it within 2 days during the lockdown. Can you imagine?
Wow.
So
That's thrilling.
there is something about this. And I must tell you this was, I think my editor and my friend who has been my constant support, she was my beta reader also. So they will also agree that they've all had some or the other surreal supernatural experience while writing this book. So if you have a question about some creepy moment during the book, I'll tell you what had happened. But I do believe she had a huge hand in getting it done.
Definitely.
So yeah.
So,
that's
ma'am, like as you shared that it was your second book, right? So
it's supposed to be. Yeah.
It is supposed to be your second book, but fortunately you have written this as your debut book, right?
Yes.
So when it comes to this, like, let's assume the people who have already read your book and they are listening to this podcast, so what they can expect as of now, like as it is mentioned that it's the first book of the series, so you're going to continue this, or there's something else, some other genre, some other title, something else is coming as of now?
The genre is going to be the same. What will come up is the first book initially had the adventures, the introduction of the adventures of Raksha and Shakti, and how they have stumbled on something, and it starts at a place where they have already lost their mother. Okay, so the first book would have had a few more things about some sort of a backstory to what happened in this book. So that backstory is going to come in the other books. What initially was a 5-book series would now be a 4-book series, like the way I've structured it. And the first book, some parts of it will come in first. I mean, they've already come in this book, they'll come in the next, and after that the next. So 2 characters who have been shown as no longer alive in this book, they will get to know much more about them in the next books. Yeah.
So, ma'am, like, how's the overall response as of now? Or like how people have accepted this book as of now?
I am surprised it's been pretty well received, and I always have my mom, as I told you, was the first person who actually made me read, and she was the one who would tell us her own story. So her opinion mattered a lot to me. So she has actually read all my drafts also. So she has read this book 3 times. And all the three times she's like, this is amazing. I mean, this should happen. And everybody who has read it, they were like, you have written it so beautifully. I mean, why don't you pitch it as a web series or something like that? So that has been the general response. And and people want to know more about
definitely.
what is going to happen, because I've ended it on a cliffhanger. Yeah. So there is something left for next time.
Definitely.
So
please.
No, so people are egging me to write the second book now.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yes.
That if something this kind of thrill, if it's written, then definitely. And in fact, what I have personally felt, ma'am, that when it comes to the playing with the psychology, if it is written that it's the series of books and the first book is this, and at the end there is a lot of suspense, then definitely whoever have read it, they will be just waiting every day, checking your profile, okay, it is about to release or not,
Yes. So that has been very intriguing, and the little project manager is again at it. So she's like, okay, first book is done, over, now when is the second one coming? So now she started doing that. So she's like, okay, have you thought of the topics? So I forgot to mention one thing. I used to love to read Dan Brown, his books, and whenever I'd read Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code and things like that, though it was exciting, I felt a little sad that we didn't have something like that in India, where we have so much architecture, so much heritage, so much culture, and nothing. We don't have a series around it. So I always used to feel that way. So there was a thought always that I need to bring this out, especially to the newer generation. So it's my stories usually revolve around some sort of architecture, some sort of heritage, some sort of urban places, some communities, or cultures which are lost in time. So all those will be part of my book. So it takes an amazing amount of research I've started doing it for my second book. So let's see how it goes about.
So, ma'am, like when it comes to, as of today's author, when it comes to, as I've already mentioned that, with the help of this podcast, I have been in touch with a lot of authors as of now. But
Correct.
what I wanted to ask, ma'am, that many of the authors are now just trying to build their personal brand. They want to be known. They want to be remembered as a certain genre, certain type of author. And when it comes to you, what sort of impact you want to create on the reader's mind? Let's assume okay, it's 2023 today, but let's assume for 2025 you have released any of your book, and a reader who has already read your book, if that particular reader picks up your book, what's that sudden thoughts and that sudden feeling you want to create on that reader's mind? Okay, ठीक है, प्रीति मैम की book ऐसी होगी, that kind of. Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about this?
Yes. I did, because this was a thought which kind of pushed me to write also consistently, because I've been writing for over 2 years, this book actually. So when a reader picks up my book, I want them to be assured that they're going to be reading a good story and they will not come out disappointed. So that is what I want them to know. And as for the brand and everything, like you said, a book is a legacy, right? A book will remain, the story will remain. Okay, it doesn't matter who tells it. I want the story to be remembered.
True.
Yeah. That's how it is.
So, ma'am, as of now, what's your current writing schedule? Like, do you write regularly? Do you devote some particular hours to your writing daily, or it's like random? जैसा मेरे साथ होता है personally. If I get some thoughts, I just jot it down somewhere, and after that, when I get time, I just go on and explore on that particular thought. How does it goes with you?
Okay, so I have my writing planned out in phases generally. So there is a huge chunk of time which I devote only to research. Okay, so I need, first my mind has to settle to the idea of writing the story, how it is going to happen, and for that I need all the data possible on what topic I'm going to write. So there are several topics. So if you've read my book, you will understand I'm not dealing with just one topic. It's not just Pass One Gulab writing. There are many other things which are interwoven into it, and all that needs a lot of thinking and research. So it's almost like a bamboo grows, the way a bamboo grows. It takes an amazing lot of time to build its roots first. So right now it's my root building phase. So that takes a lot of time. And then when all that is sorted, the story just flows. So I know that I have pulled off at least 40,000 words in about 10 days. So when I write, so I can on an average write about 4,000 words in a day if the thoughts are clear, if I know what I want to write. Then it's just about building. So that's how it is. So I want to give that much time to research and settling my thought process. So that is how it is. So I fail at the whole thing of writing for 10 minutes every day or sit at one particular time. Though I wanted to do it, it's not possible. Yeah, it's just not.
Okay.
So whenever I find time, I sit and I write. That's it.
Okay. So, ma'am, as what I have personally felt that after the first lockdown was over, I guess almost 3 years back, the numbers of authors got increased very rapidly. It was a boom for this writing industry, what I have felt, what I have seen personally. So when it comes to you, like it's your first book in the market. So how tough is this to, just stand out in this whole market? Like, there are lots of authors writing, around hundreds of books are being published every week, we can say. So how tough it is to just stand out in this whole market?
See, this boom we've seen it. I'm really glad that there are so many more stories coming out. Now it's upon the readers to sift and decide what is worth reading and what is not. So I have also picked up many books, and out of 10, I can safely say I regret reading at least 6. and 4 are worth having spent my time. So that also has happened, which I believe that there needs to be a quality control, which I think only the reader can discern. But it's good that so many stories are coming out. So that's like a good thing there. As far as competition is concerned, I'm not really worried about it too much, because a good story will be heard, a good story will be read.
So true, so true.
So if the story is nice, whether it's mine or whether it's anybody else's, it must reach a larger audience. So that's the only good point about all these things. So it's actually a nice time, nice time for storytellers and stories.
That's also true. In fact, what I personally feel that there are so much of option that a person who is slightly also interested in reading anything, they will get a bunch of options, so that definitely they can just go with it, because of this amount of options which we have available as of now. Like, if anybody asks to me, okay, just you are in this industry, just suggest me around 2 books, I end up suggesting around 5 to 10 books to just go for it.
Yes, absolutely. Agree.
So, ma'am, as of now, we have talked about your book, about your journey, about your upcoming projects and everything. Now, coming to the point where many people think that a person who has written something and the person who is in the real, they both are completely different. So, let's talk about individually you. There must be a lot of moments in your life which you tag as the happiest moment of your life, right? So, if you can share with us any one of them, then that would be really great.
My happiest moments have been when my children were born. So it's the most I don't know, it's the most sublime moment, I think.
Just a minute, I wanted to interrupt you. I was so sure about this particular answer, because whatever parents have come on my show, whenever I asked okay, what was the happiest moment, this was the answer which I am hearing from last 2 years. Each and every parent's first happiest moment is that, and after that they just say okay, it can be different for people. Most of them says okay, after holding my first book was the greatest moment, but the first one was when I hold just get the child in my lap, and those are. So I was so sure about this.
There are 2 reasons to this. One is of course we are happy and all that is there as a parent, but the second is our children also are going to listen to this podcast, and if we don't say that, you know what's going to happen then.
That's a realistic one.
It's like you have to be smart also, right?
You have to equate everything.
My kids,
So, ma'am, now let's go to the time when you heard tomorrow your book will be live. Everyone will be able to judge your thoughts. Everyone will be able to judge you on the basis of your work you have done. And many people will, in fact, get to know कि अच्छा आप लिखते भी हो, अच्छा ठीक है. So at that particular eve, what was going in your mind? Were you stressed, relaxed, excited? Have you just marked up some milestones? Okay, my book has to be sold out these many copies. What was going on your mind at that time?
Oh, I was petrified. I was scared. I was like, okay, it's done now. Now I wanted people to read, and I realized very painfully that they don't read much. People of my generation read. The younger generation, they barely read. They're like, is there an audiobook? I was like, audiobook? Read, man. Or can you tell me the story as I get lost? That way. I was Can you tell me the story? Or is there an audiobook? Is there a reading? You read it yourself and you tell me how it is. So I know people from my generation have all read. But and from my daughter's generation, I know only a handful who have read, and many who are reading it still. They started it in October.
No.
They're still reading it. 2 pages, 2 pages, 2 pages, 2 pages, that way. So I can't read so much. Why you can't read so much? So, is there an audiobook coming out, auntie? But that's there. So it's that way.
No.
I was really scared, and I was anxious to know really. It was a labor of love, right? So I wanted people to I wanted to know how is it received, what
बिल्कुल.
do people say about it. And when I got my first review, I was in tears, and I was so happy that somebody has read it and taken time to tell me.
True.
And so was my mother. My mother was also in tears. Like, I know, I'm telling you that by that time she had finished reading it twice. So that's how it is.
So, ma'am, my last question to this podcast is like, after listening to this podcast, many people will start writing, or they must be holding their first draft in their hand in their laptop. So, what are your advices for those upcoming writers?
My only advice is focus on telling a good story. Don't focus on selling a story. Just tell it. Okay. So there is a huge difference between telling a story and selling a story. If you cater to the market, the story will never come from your heart. If you want to tell it, it has to come from your heart. So that's the only advice I have to give.
That's something, which even profounds the authenticity of an author too. Because if you will target the audience, then definitely we will try to mock up something which is not so true. So definitely that has to be done, because write whatever you want, your heart want, and not what you want the people to show, because the readers are very smart. They will assume it's not the real thing. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's all for today, guys. I hope you must have enjoyed this beautiful conversation with Preeti ma'am, and if you do, then do follow our podcast Reading the Author, available on all the leading podcast platforms. And don't forget to buy and read the book. आप just Amazon पे जाएं, वहाँ पे सर्च करें प्रीति नायर नायक मैम की बुक आ जाएगी. ज़रूर खरीदें, पढ़ें और अपने जानने वालों के साथ, चैनल के साथ ज़रूर शेयर करें. Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming on our show. It was my honor to be able to host you today.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it too. Enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.